Hola a todos. Hoy vamos a estar discutiendo el imperfecto del subjuntivo en español. So today we're going to be talking about the imperfect subjunctive in Spanish. In the first part, we're going to concentrate on the formation, and in the second part, we are going to focus on the context in which it is required, okay? So as you would see, the imperfect subjunctive is expressed as el imperfecto del subjuntivo in Spanish. So how do we form this, right? To form the imperfect subjunctive, the third person plural preterite form of the verb is used. However, the ron is removed and the following endings are added. No. That means that in order to form this mood, you need to know the preterite. So if you do not know how to conjugate verbs in the preterite, well, you must be able to do that in order to form this mood, right? The third person plural preterite form, right? So it does not matter whether the verb is irregular, regular, whatever. It will take the preterite form. So of course there are irregular verbs in the preterite, but you have to know how to conjugate them. You know, they're verbs with stem changes, spelling changes, etc., etc. But you have to know them in order to be able to form this mood, right? So we conjugate the verb according to the third person plural preterite form, and then we remove the ron, right? And you would add these endings. Now you would see that what you see in brackets would be the second way that it can be done, because there are two ways we can form the imperfect subjunctive. But I must mention that the ra is far more common. So you will see that far more often than the se. But the se is correct, of course, right? So let's look at the endings. Yo, ra, or se. Tú, ras, or ses. Él, ella, usted, ra, or se. Nosotros, nosotras, ramos, or semos. Vosotros or vosotras, rais, or seis. Ellos, ellas, ustedes, harán, or sen. Right? So you choose whichever one you prefer, right? But what's key and what is vital is that you know how to conjugate the verb according to the preterite form, right? Ejemplos. So we're going to look at the verb decir, which means to say or to tell. So the first thing we need to do is we need to put the verb in the preterite tense and conjugate it according to the third person plural. So we have dijeron, right? Remember, we removed the ron, so we have dije. So that's the stem basically. Now we will just add the endings according to the different subjects. So dijera or dijese, dijeras, dijeses, dijera, dijese, dijéramos, dijésemos, dijerais, dijeseis, dijeran, and dijesen. So this is the verb decir conjugated completely according to the imperfect subjunctive. Okay? Similarly, let's look at the verb estar, which means to be, of course. So we put it in the preterite form. Estuvieron. We remove the ron, so we get estuvier, right? So once we remove the ron, we get estuvier. Estuviera or estuviese. Estuvieras or estuvieses. Estuviera, estuviese. Estuviéramos o estuviésemos. Estuvierais o estuvieseis. estuvieran or estuviesen. So that would be the verb estar. That would be a complete conjugation of the verb estar in the imperfect subjunctive. Now, please note this. In the nosotros or nosotras form, an accent is placed on the vowel before the endings. Right. So you see that an accent is on the A or the E, right, in both examples, right? So remember that in the third person, in the first person plural, which is the nosotros or nosotras, the vowel before the ending will have an accent, right? So just remember that. So yes, this is how we would form the imperfecto de subjuntivo. This is how we would, del subjuntivo. This is how we would form it in Spanish, right? So you must be familiar with the preterite form in order to know how to formulate this mood, all right? So now we are going to proceed to the context. So we proceed to the context, los usos. The imperfect subjunctive will be used in the same context as the present subjunctive. The only difference is that the tense has changed. Yep. So it's the same context. So wishes, desires, impersonal expressions, negation, doubt, what have you, right? And I'm actually going to attach the link. I'm actually going to leave the link in the description of the video of the uses of the subjunctive. So in that video, it would have broken down the general uses of the subjunctive. So the imperfect subjunctive is just the past tense. That's all. So the same context. Okay. So for example, ejemplos. So a wish. Yo quería que hiciera buen tiempo. I wanted the weather to be nice. That's a wish. If I wanted to put that in the present tense, I would say, yo quiero que haga buen tiempo. Simple. It's just that it's past tense. Same thing over here. You know that we use the subjunctive with certain conjunctions. Para qué, right? So let's look at this example. Mi madre me despertó para que pudiéramos irnos. My mother woke me up so that we could leave, right? Yes, so this is actually the part I should have had in red, but wait. If I wanted to put that in the present tense, it would be mi madre me despierta para que podamos irnos. See? So that would be the present tense form. All right, so those are just two examples of context in which the subjunctive is generally required. But like I said, we use the imperfect subjunctive here because it is past tense. That's the only difference. Okay? All right. Now, there are three different contexts that I'm going to show you. So the first context is going to be for hypothetical situations. And in this case, we use the word si. Right? Not C with the tilde, because that would mean yes, but C. And the structure is going to be C followed by the imperfect subjunctive followed by the conditional. Okay? So let's look at some examples. Si yo ganara la lotería, compraría una casa. If I were to win the lottery, I would buy a house. So you see, si, we have the imperfect subjunctive, that is the hypothetical, right? If that were to happen, right? And what you would do. So, compraría una casa. So, after si, if we're talking about a hypothetical, we have to use the imperfect subjunctive. We cannot use the present subjunctive there. Si can only be followed by the indicative or the past subjunctive, right? And that's when we're talking about hypothetical situations, right? Another example. Si fuera fácil, todo el mundo lo haría. If it were easy, everyone would do it. Yep. So the structure is going to be C followed by the imperfect subjunctive followed by the conditional. Okay? So yes, the second context, as if, como si. So él trabaja como si fuera pobre. He works as if he were poor. And it doesn't matter that the structure before it is in the present tense, but we use the imperfect subjunctive after como si, right, to talk about, an imaginary situation, right? Él trabaja como si fuera pobre. So we are saying that might not be the case. So we are talking about something imaginary, right? And the last context is going to be politeness. Yo quisiera ir contigo. I would like to go with you. So quisiera, right. That would be the imperfect subjunctive of the verb querer, right? So yo quisiera ir contigo. I would like to go with you. And when we use it with the conditional, we would have me gustaría que hicieras la tarea, because you use the imperfect subjunctive with the conditional, right? Me gustaría que hicieras la tarea. I would like you to do the homework. And the same rules will apply. In terms of the subject having to change after the que, yes. So if we use the conditional in the first part, then and we use que and the subject change and the subject will have to change, we will use the imperfect subjunctive. So that is an example of that structure. Even though this is politeness, but in general, if we use the conditional and then we use the que, whatever follows has to be in the imperfect subjunctive. So you would see that the imperfect subjunctive is associated with the conditional, right? So these are three contexts in which the imperfect subjunctive is required. Those would be three additional contexts, because in the last video, which would have addressed the general uses, that more concentrated on the present subjunctive, right? So these three contexts would be three additional contexts, but these would be unique to the imperfect subjunctive, right? Es todo por hoy. Espero que ustedes lo entiendan. Muchas gracias por ver como siempre y hasta luego.